Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. I'm here with Clover.
Hi there. Hi.
Are you as magical as the four-leafed ones?
I'd like to think so.
See, I could have went two ways with that. I could have said that, or I could have said Cloverland Dairy, because that is probably the best milk I've ever had in my entire life.
Well, I don't really know much about milk, believe it or not. I'm not like a milk person. If it's not in my cereal, I don't really want it.
Did you go to
Um,
school?
I did,
You
but
didn't
I
have
did not go to a
Cloverland
public
Dairy.
school. I
What?
did not go to public school. I
What?
went to like a small charter school for like my whole life. My largest class was 16 kids.
This is going to sound really dumb, but when you say charter, are we talking about a fishing trip?
Not really. It's actually so it's like think of it halfway through private school and halfway to public school. So it's free, but it's like funded kind of like a private school in that there's like rich people that want to like give you school, I guess. But like I and my parents didn't have to like pay to get in. So it's like a free public school.
See, I always debated if I wanted to do private school. And then I got into a podcast with a private school teacher, and we got into like almost turned into an argument, which has never happened on this show. But it was about should students get free lunch? And then like he was like, no. And I was like, well, hang on a second. I've needed free lunch before. I've had those days. You don't ever want a child going
Yeah.
hungry. And then he started talking more, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. You're thinking of a private school. Like, they don't deserve free lunch. It's not they don't deserve it. It's just that they can afford a private school.
Exactly.
So I was like, all right, we got it figured out. He was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, but if we're looking at public schools, I don't know too much about it. I'm like, yeah, there's some kids there who need a free lunch.
Yeah, 100%. Like charter school is like the free version of private school for sure. My high school was super cool. I got to like have half of my college paid for, so I'm already a college graduate before age I think I wasn't even 21 when I had my bachelor's.
Let me
So,
tell you something. I got my college paid for. It's called financial aid, and thank God that thing exists.
yes. If it weren't for financial aid, I wouldn't have been able to pay for the other half of my degree. That's for sure. Transferred my degree to the Northern Arizona University. So go Jacks. And I just zipped through, I think, 2 years. It was really cool.
So
So
you
charter
didn't
schools.
you didn't go to school for a cannabis podcast like I found you through. What did you go to school
No.
for?
I went to school for hotel restaurant management, which is probably the dumbest thing ever because you don't need to be doing that. Like, it's just work at a restaurant, dang it. Like, I thought it was going to be like one of those things where I could like travel the world and do all these fun things. And it's a lot harder to do that than you'd expect. And then I started working at an eye doctor's office. And my best friend and I, Hunter, who's my other co host on my podcast, we started working there together. And then we one day were just shooting the shit about how we should have a podcast about marijuana and how we could like educate others on how to consume safely, how to like dose appropriately. Like this podcast is all about like first time users. So like we try to educate you on like how to use or like how like I want to be able to get to the point where like I come over to your little old grandma's house and we teach her how to roll a joint and show her all the benefits and that kind of stuff.
Where were
So
you in my
that's
life
how
when
we
I was
started our
spending
podcast.
where were you in my life when I was spending most of my years just getting high? Because throughout my whole entire high school, I got too high. And if anybody's ever seen or heard the music video by Little Dicky called Too High, that's what
Oh
it was
yeah.
like for me. And I haven't picked up marijuana since. I got medical CBD for my vape. It works, but like getting too stoned was my whole high experience every time I smoked, and I didn't know
Mhm.
how to stop it, and I had the worst experiences to the point where I thought my balls went into my asshole. Like
Oh yeah.
the
I definitely that's part of what we want to do with our podcast is like prevent things like that from happening cuz that's a scenario of over medicating. So you probably for per tens you smoke like 3 hits of a joint. Maybe you should have only hit once and like that kind of situation.
Well,
And
it's like
it's
you're
about
tossed into
finding your
so.
like,
There's a bit of a
yeah,
delay, I just realized.
no, that's
But
okay.
there's like this scenario that you get tossed in sometimes when you're smoking. At least every time it was like a social thing too. But at the same time, it's like you don't want to seem like a wimp for stopping, but it's like, when do you know? And then by the time it's already
Mhm.
too late, you're just thinking all over the place, like, oh my God, I can't look like a fool or a chump now. And then I get locked in the bathroom for what seems like 45 minutes. And
Yep.
at this time, I guess everybody had to use the bathroom. So I was like, I was like, dude, I don't know how to get out of this thing. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm talking to myself in the mirror, and he really enlightening me on some things. And I kind of pictured myself as like Walter Cronkite, I would say. Like,
Yeah.
that's the
I've
way the
definitely been
smoke
there before.
goes.
Hunter and I, we have been friends for about 7 years or so, and he was the first person to give me a dab, good old concentrates. So I have definitely been there. I have been on his couch like freaking out.
Have you ever, like, can you
But
give me a good high, like a bad high experience? Because I always feel like I have multiples and everyone else is like, maybe you're just not doing it right. I was like, obviously, because I don't think you're supposed to feel your fucking teeth at any point in life. You should never know what that feels like.
yeah, I don't really know if I've had like a majorly bad experience, but I think it's really strictly because THC is so different for everybody. I was recently talking to a geneticist who like looks at your genes and like explains like you're sensitive to THC or you're not sensitive or like you really really need it, and like so it goes so the body is very particular about what it wants. Like somebody who's allergic to peanuts, they may have like a severe allergy or they may have like a small allergy. So it's kind of like how you have to treat THC, like you may have a high sensitivity to it, and a lot of where you get that paranoia and that like freaking out is having a quote unquote overdose of THC. It's not truly an overdose in the typical sense of the word, but it's just like overloading your brain, and it opens a lot of like dopamine pathways, and sometimes that can be too overwhelming for some people, especially depending on their mental health and their like environment. Because if you were in like a super chill relaxed environment, perhaps your own home versus like your homie's house at a party, those can be completely different mindsets as well. It's like if you were to take like a bunch of shrooms, you can't just like take them in the middle of the day at work. You got to be in the right mindset and do them at the right kind of time, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I looked at I think I always experienced the green out effect, which is getting too high where you kind of seem like you
Hmm.
get I think some people that might be actually allergic to it. I know that sounds stupid,
Very,
but
very possible. No, I've met plenty of people with an allergy. There's also a cannabis disease out there. It's called, the acronym is CHS, and it's like a hypersensitivity to cannabis to the point where you can't have CBD or THC or any kind of anything. And if you do, you get incredibly nauseous to the point where no anti-nausea medication helps, just a hot bath.
that is literally everything I've experienced. The whole factor of like every time I've always gotten mad sick over it. Like, I mean, spins, usually I end up puking or something. Sometimes
Hmm.
depending, but like it was always so strong to the point, like, I mean, it was even if I did a little bit, it was like, I don't know if it was just good weed or I don't know what it was, but my face would be flush
Right.
white. But like even where I don't do it, I still am pro for it because I've seen it help so many people, and I can see where it could be.
100%.
I think it's changed my perspective on life a little bit just from the very first time I smoked it. Not in like, oh, everything's beautiful and everything's pure, but more like everything you're kind of ignoring. When you say it's like your body's like equalizer to realize everything around it, it's the factor of like when I was able to feel my teeth, I was constantly self-analyzing myself in kind of an
Hmm.
extreme way, but it really showed me like, hey, that's your second Diet Coke. that's this, that's that. Why don't you slow down and start to enjoy some things? You notice all these things were on autopilot, like
Mhm.
24/7, like freaking zombies. But when you're high, you're like, you're in the moment. Cause like the biggest decision is like trying to
Yeah.
figure out which candy bar you want from the store. Like for me, that was anxiety, but that was kind of like, oh, that's time kind of was like moving by, like you would think, like, oh, this
Yeah.
minute, I'm actually into this minute. Now it seems like I could just start talking and then 50 minutes later it's fucking over. I'm like, am I
Yeah.
enjoying it? Am I doing this? It's like you got to learn to kind of enjoy life a little bit, the detail and everything about it.
Yeah. That's like for some people with anxiety, marijuana can be very helpful because then it gives them that point of like being able to break down of like, okay, this is around me, or oh, okay, and this is around me. But it also can be extremely overwhelming for those with anxiety as well because again, it's like releasing a bunch of extra dopamine that you don't need right now. And it's it's something that you want to like take in baby steps for sure. It's
So when I
like
did
for me personally,
well, my
I do a
first
lot more CBD.
I'll say my first dab experience, I did a 50-cent coin size, and I barely am able to. Yeah, I did. It wasn't for me. It was my buddy. He was like, oh, he was way too high, and he was like, I'm gonna hit this. And then as he was lighting it and getting everything set up, he goes, Rob, hit this real quick. I'm like, yeah, sure. And I walked over and did the full thing, the full amount.
You poor soul. I don't think I've ever done a dab that big.
And
Oh
not
my.
not was that only traumatic. I happened to be at his buddy's house, who later became my friend, but it was like my second time meeting the guy. Dude pulls out cocaine and has a giant mound of it on the table. And I'm like, am I just way too stoned? Is this really happening? So I did what my brain told me to do and do something I know, which was I went into their family room, whatever it was called, his little lounge area,
Yeah.
and I started playing Xbox, but I could not figure out how to get the disc into the Xbox. So what I did was I just started trying to scroll through all of his games and apps, and I ended up clearing half of his data on his Xbox. I was like, a lot of this I can just clear up some free space for you. And for anybody that would sober and looking at that would be like, that guy is completely fucking trashed. But then I seemed like a really good guy because he was like, thanks, man.
Yeah.
My Xbox was running slow, but we were all really fucked up. So I seemed helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely kind of like how weed can be sometimes, where you like expect things to go great and then suddenly things don't. I mean, probably like there most of my like bad stories are not on weed. Um I for a long time like I lived in what I like to refer to as the crack house, and it was just I had a bunch of roommates who didn't really it was just like a big YOLO kind of situation. I lived with a couple guys, this gal. One of the guys was like heavily into drugs, like a lot. He would have anything you can think of, just like chilling in his room. And so I learned a lot. Probably like my scariest scenario is them like trying to like make mescaline in my kitchen, and then they're like blowtorching some stuff to purge it, and they bust my Pyrex. And I was kind of pissed because I'm a baker. Like I used to bake and sell edibles, and
Oh, you're my
it was
type
a
of
it was
woman.
a tragedy.
If you make edibles, that's like my favorite way of getting high is getting it through my food. Like I remember trying to make eggs one time, and I was like, I'm gonna just sprinkle some weed on it, like oregano. Fucking,
Mhm.
I don't think I got high off of it, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure I needed a lot more if it was gonna do anything. It just
Well, just
tasted like a
sprinkling it in just
yeah.
wouldn't quite
It tasted like a
release
weed
the
omelet.
THC.
It wasn't good. Yeah.
Some people do need to treat it like an herb, like quite literally like oregano and like sprinkling it in. Something kind of like that would be helpful, but it wouldn't necessarily release all the THC. You'd get a lot of CBD, and if the plant had CBG in it, you'd get all the other cannabinoids coming through, which is super important. There is what is called the entourage effect, and it is all of the cannabinoids, which there are more than 113 known cannabinoids. THC and CBD of course, the top two biggest, most important ones, or rather, most researched. And all of them working together brings your body to a homeostasis kind of space. Like they just want yeah, that's the word. So homeostasis is really what marijuana is trying to get you to. It's you have this thing in your body called the endocannabinoid system. It was discovered sometime in the late 90s, and it is just quite literally like a system in your body that recepts with the the cannabinoids. Like the THC will bond to it, the CBD will bond to it, and those, like your endocannabinoid system is trying to reach you to homeostasis, and cannabis is the only thing that will interact with it, which is very unique and super cool.
Well, when you're doing your podcast, do you try and just educate people on a better way to use it, or do you ever have guests on there to talk about their experiences too? Because I feel like a lot of what is kind of left out about the industry a little bit, or just cannabis in general. Thank you, sir, that dropped the coffee mug off. But the factor of like a lot of people, if they have a story like mine, they're very, very afraid and they feel like it's not for them,
Mm-hmm.
like I kind of do.
Yeah.
But you start to realize, like, I've had a few cannabis people on. The reason why I asked if you guys talk to guests, because I know a few people that I think will be good for your show. They're cannabis chef, THC infusion chefs, I think they're called.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
His name's Chef Turtle, Neil, and then Dorothy Lawson, who does Ruby Red Confections. They make edible creations, but
Oh,
talking about their whole experiences of getting high, the fun times of it and the bad times of it, really is making it relatable to an audience member that might be trying marijuana for the first time and wondering why their fingertips, they can't stop
yeah.
feeling them. You know, like it's sometimes people become
Yeah.
oversensitive because I feel like our bodies lack the need for sensitivity in this world when it comes to just average picking up an object and touching it. That's why when you're, when you smoke weed and get too high, if you grab an object and you feel it, you're like, whoa, I can feel the shit out of this, literally.
You're
And
like,
it's because you've been
mm-hmm.
lacking on it for so long that your brain's like, hey, did you know we're totally just ignoring this whole sensor? Like the one thing I would be afraid to lose out of all my senses is touch.
Oh,
Just
I totally agree.
vision sucks. Hearing would suck to lose it, but I mean, the factor of like, you can't feel anything. Like the world just being cold, like you could see
Oh,
something, but you couldn't feel it. That would just hurt.
yeah, absolutely. And being able to so I have to answer your question about guests. We have had a few guests on. A majority of them have been to either explain their product. We've had Canna Hemp, which is a major CBD company out here. We've had them on our podcast, and we've broken down CBD and how it can be helpful for others, because CBD is that non-psychoactive one, which a lot of as you know, it's the hottest thing right now. And then we've had a few guests. Oh, we had Jo Patton recently. She is we did a Black Lives Matter episode because legal cannabis has yet to help the Black community. It is continue to just hurt the Black community as much as the war on drugs has. So we had Jo Patton, who is the what's the word? The creator of the Blackout Union, which is a entrepreneur cannabis kind of deal where all of your Black friends and fam and neighbors can get together if they're trying to start up a cannabis industry type scenario. I'm trying to think of the word. If
Kind
you're
of
just
show
trying to
you how
open up a
I say, does it kind of show you how fucked up a society is when if you see a black
oh,
man smoking a joint and then a white man smoking a joint, you consider the white guy maybe a medical marijuana patient, but you consider the black guy a drug dealer? That's pretty fucked.
exactly. And that's part of why we decided that episode was so important, was to bring a light on that, because so many people have that stigma. And she's a dispensary agent So she would be, in the dispensary selling you your medicine, because Arizona is only a medical state right now. So we're in there, and it's like people are giving her a hard time, assuming she either doesn't know what she's doing or she's only there trying to push something, and it's all strictly based off of her skin color. Whereas if you like came in and saw me, you would sit there and listen to everything that I had to say, which is so sad because she probably knows more than I do, which is crazy to think because I know a lot about weed.
I know I always preach the fact that like conversation is pretty important, but I feel like if more people just did it, you would have like a better way of thinking. Like my perspective on life has completely changed from when I was a kid to where I'm at now. But like I've always kind of been like this pure kind of like let somebody talk and get their point across type thinking. But like imagine like if we had
Yeah.
more owners that thought that way of businesses and everything, the world would be a completely different place. For the factor of like society has just been running like shit for the longest time, and now people are just now noticing it. I'm like, it's been running
Yeah.
like trash for a very long time, but it's been comfortable and safe, and that's why we choose to stay in it. Well, shit, you said
Mhm.
something really interesting earlier. The fact of when like living in what you'd call a crack house, you didn't notice it. If
I didn't
anything,
notice it until I moved out. Absolutely.
well, if anything, Breaking Bad has taught us is that once you start diving into other realms of stuff, you start getting so encapsulated in it that you can't
Mhm.
see the clear picture of things. And I think that's what we've kind of
Absolutely.
done as society. We've been stepped back so far and looking at this thing, and now it's like, oh, holy crap, we've been doing this wrong for so long. We have so many issues to fix, and this is where we're experiencing everything, the turmoil that's going on in the world. I'm like, yeah, let's try and fix it. How does that start? I mean, it's amazing that medical marijuana has become such a popular thing now. It's cool that we're
Mhm.
looking to a better form of like health, but I just like I'm looking at everything that's going on. I'm like, what is like the where do we go from here type situation? Like, is it
Yeah.
yeah, is it like smoke and then get to like a point where we just forget about it? Like I know some people that smoke and they just use that to make the day go by. I'm like, I think it needs to be
Mhm.
enjoyed too, not just like a way to null out everything in the
Absolutely.
world.
Like, I am what I would consider a Snoop Dogg smoker all day, every day. I wait purposefully until after 9 a.m. just in case, like, I have something crazy going on in the morning. But I just kind of like wait until 9 a.m. Then I'll smoke pretty much till 9 p.m. And um, I like medicate all day long. And it's mostly because I have chronic back pain, and then I'm feeling anxious, and then I'm feeling this, and then this happens. And then some of it I am just chilling and smoking and hanging. And I have recently been seeing a psychologist because I am majorly depressed and I'm just like so sick of it. I can't deal with it. And a lot of it has to do with being cooped up for, I don't know, at this point, 6 months or something like that. And my psychologist was like, THC is really bad for you, blah, 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 but you can have all the CBD you want. So I've been slowly trading my THC items for CBD items so I don't feel like I'm missing out. And that has been very helpful. I've found myself a little less anxious. I've found myself a little bit more up to getting out of the house when I need to, which is pretty cool. Just like, and like the nice thing is like I have CBD flower, so I just like roll up a joint of CBD instead of regular stuff, and that works out really well, and I don't feel like I'm missing out, which is like super awesome. Um,
You know what I
but
think the answer is to just
hmm,
getting a lot of depression out. I mean, I suffer from it too. I have severe depression. You
oh,
probably can't really tell. But like, I had 3 friends die in a matter of 2 weeks, just these
oh
past two
wow,
weeks. So what I started to notice was like, wow, like you need to talk about it. You need to work through it.
yeah,
I had some people help me out in some dark, dark times. But for
like
instance, shameless plug of
talking to
myself.
people out about it. Yeah.
Shameless plug of myself. This shirt that I'm wearing. I just got it in the mail, and it was so random where I thought my day was going to suck. And then I just opened it up. I'm like, whoa, I totally forgot about this. Let's start a thing where, is it sad to send flowers to yourself randomly? I feel like at the time it seemed like a crazy thing, but it might be a way to cheer yourself up. Like randomly, like, I want to give
Yeah.
you $250 to send flowers to me whenever in the next year. And then you're just at work and some dude comes in with a thing of flowers. He's like, here you go, motherfucker. And you're just like, woo,
That
my
it's
day.
like giving yourself like that like own hype and like giving yourself like that pump up. And that's part of why I didn't want to like totally take out THC like my doctor suggested. I was like, I don't want to like feel like I'm missing out. So let's fucking just do the same thing and like hype myself up with this other stuff. And then here I am like, okay, now I can like walk outside and then we can like go to Target and just walk around cuz Target is every girl's like it's too hot outside, so let's walk around Target. That's where I'm at for sure. I don't buy anything. I look.
That's like that's the best thing when you're in a store. But if you're stoned in a store, it's like you spend a lot of time
Oh,
really observing things you really never observed before. I love it.
that is 1000% one of my favorite things to do is go into the store just totally blazed out of my mind. My gal pals and I would go to the Walmart in Flag and just walk around just blitzed out of our minds and probably not walk out with anything, just like, ooh, look at that. That do that. Like, ooh, touch this. And it's like the whole day was filled with that. We probably spent like maybe 2 to 3 hours just like in the Walmart, as if that was like something fun to do at college.
I think that is kind of like the point, though, is like it's a great way to keep yourself from boredom. Because okay, so I'm going to ask you this question. The kind of a
Mhm.
really good, memorable experience for me is the fact of my brother owned a DVD called Red Hot Chili Peppers Live at the Slane Castle. Now, if you watch this, it is probably 2.5 hours long, but I watched it blazed
Mhm.
off my fucking rocker. And I
Mm.
just got done playing Skate 3. And the whole time I was like, I can't even do a shove it. I can't do anything. I can't do any tricks on the
Mm.
skateboard because I'm just, at this point, I forgot how to move my thumbs. And so
Mhm.
I'm watching Red Hot Chili Peppers Live at the Slane Castle. And I could sense everything that I couldn't pick up when I watched it sober. And what I meant by that is like
Uh-huh.
the energy, like
Absolutely.
Torture Me, that song that they have off Stadium Arcadium. When you start really paying attention to it, you hear John Frusciante's vocals. And when I was
Yeah.
watching it, I saw him with his mouth wide open and he's like hearing the guitar just whammy and whine, and he's making the mimic noises with his mouth, like the whine with his mouth, so you can't tell if it's coming from him or the guitar. And then but you could
Mhm.
see like the tension in between the members of the band. Like Flea and Chad were obviously vibing with each other, and then it seemed like Anthony Kiedis was a little bit distant from John Frusciante, which later they turned
Yeah.
out to have major issues. And it was like it really showed a lot of shit, but like I was so
Mhm.
encapsulated into the moment of the music where the songs, and it felt like the strum of the guitar, like I could hear the strings like in slow-mo being
And you
plucked.
could
Ooh,
I was like, you can almost like feel, like literally feel the music.
yeah.
And that's definitely one thing I definitely miss right now is getting my butt to a concert because a lot of my like music is definitely my calm and my like thing that I enjoy quite a bit. Pink Floyd is my jam. I love Red Hot Chili Peppers as well. Like they're like you absolutely are right. You sit and like you pick out each of the little parts of the song as it's being played and you're like hearing everything. There's some fun scientific stuff that they have done about why when you smoke weed music sounds so good, and it's because your brain like slows everything down and like can process it a little easier and a little bit more like on time with everything. So it's kind of interesting how like your brain like is able to process all of those different things because it's been slowed down and able to be broken down a little bit more, which is really cool.
So like my whole family, everybody plays an instrument. And for a while, like for my brother, a main thing is marijuana. He uses that to like write songs. He loves just being in and play music around it. That's his thing. Me, I'm the type of guy, you tell me to play the notes, I'll be able to hit the notes. So I actually picked up this instrument called a melodica. And for people that don't know what that is, it is a piano with a mouthpiece. So you have to breathe into it as you play. So
Okay.
imagine being stoned off your ass and trying to play an instrument like that. It is so fucking complicated to the point where
I
you're
would have
like,
been laughing my ass off trying to figure it out. Like,
I was out of breath like every second, and I'm like trying to remember to hit the notes and which way my finger positions have to be, and also remember to breathe in and then breathe out to actually play. And it's
yeah.
like, oh my God, it was so much anxiety. Like, you'd be like, why are you doing this
And
right now?
sometimes with all of those things being broken down, it can be anxiety inducing and it can be like too much for some people to keep all of those things in track. Like for myself, I think I would thrive in that situation because for me, when I like smoke and then do something, for example, like that's how I got all A's and B's through college was because I could sit and break down everything and take it piece by piece. I wish I was an instrument kind of guy, but that's my hubby. He does the instruments. I listen and clap. I like right now I'm like mask making because I sew quite a bit right now. I have my sewing machine chilling in front of the TV so I can like sit and make masks for everybody because that's the hottest item right now. But I'll sit there and I'll be like blazed off of my mind and I'll get one section done and then the other section done. And it's like broken down in a way where I can like see like as I'm sewing, I'm gonna need to take this stitch out. Like I can tell as I'm doing it. And
See,
then that way I can like instead of like finishing it off, I just take it out and
I can't do that because I need to have a free day. Like, I think another really good experience was I there's a show on YouTube you can watch called Getting Dug with High.
oh, I love them.
Okay, so this
Doug
was the
Benson.
most trippiest experience, and I understand why Todd Glass did it, and I will never look at him the same because he did this. But oh, Todd Glass, for instance, he was on there smoking, and he just looks at the camera, and I'm sitting here on like just baked out of my mind, just watching him eating a bag of pretzels, and he goes, yeah, you sitting there eating chips. What are you doing? You're watching me on TV. Why don't you go do something with your life? And I'm like, holy shit, Todd Glass is talking to me. And it was like the craziest thing. And he just goes, hey, and like everyone's like, Todd, what are you doing? He just goes, there's somebody out there that's doing that right now, and they're going to get something from that. That's going to be fun for them. I'm like, oh, he's caring about the audience, but he's breaking the fourth wall, and he's picking a particular moment that could be a 0.25% chance happening for someone out there, and he's fucking hitting them. I was like, I love that because, like, that stuff just when they bring you in on it, you're like, oh God, like that's a thing that's going to be stuck in my brain. That's 6 years ago. So that's stuck in here still.
Is so memorable because the whole movie he just sits there and breaks the whole fourth wall. The fourth wall is very cool and I really enjoy busting it out.
What was
Like our
okay, but I
that's a
asked,
little bit of what we try to do with our podcast too.
so when you're talking to
Directly
people, for
applicable.
instance, on your podcast, what do you typically try and start with? You have a structure to the show, or you kind of just see where it goes?
It's a little bit conversation based and a little bit outliney. Just not major. Like if we have a guest on, it'll be who are you? What do you do in the cannabis space? And like what's your main topic that we're going to talk about? And then we sit down and have a conversation about it, and it just kind of free forms that way. Because I'm not a super structured kind of person, to be quite honest. But that is not bad.
Yeah, well, what's
And
the most
then
memorable thing you've learned from like a guest, like something they told you that kind of enlightened you a little bit?
that was definitely with Joe and how like incredibly racist people are still. And it like blew my mind. She had a patient like sing at her a song because they were just being racist. And it, like, as the story goes, if you listen to our latest episode, the story will be pulled out, but it's like, genuinely, we thought this guy was like, I think this guy thought it was a joke and thought it was funny and thought it was like okay to sing those things at her and like say the things that it was. And that was like really impactful because it was, holy fuck, like people really are racist. And even in a community that is supposed to be so kumbaya and like hippie and like everyone loves everyone, and that's like, when you think of marijuana, that's usually like how you think of the people associated with it, is like all hippie and like happy-go-lucky. And this guy was just so gross, and that was like pretty eye-opening. Learning more about CBD and how that can be helpful for somebody who can't or won't have or has a bad experience with THC. That was pretty eye-opening. I've had, for the most part, we've kind of kept we haven't had a lot of guests, and that's because it's kind of hard to have guests. I've had a couple actually fall through, which is kind of unfortunate. But right now it's also kind of difficult because COVID, and then like you're like, hey, I'm trying to get you to be on my podcast, and they're like, I don't have a microphone. I'm like, well, how are we supposed to do this remotely then? And so, ooh, yeah, okay, I see this.
So there's an app called Zoom. So when you said you were going to use your laptop, I was like, the app on your phone is probably going to be 1,000 times better for you. It's usually how I do it. But I'm more than happy to get you some guests. I've talked to a few people involved in the medical marijuana industry, and I'm sure they would love to sit down and chat. I think it's something people are passionate about. I think it's just the factor of, for so long, it's just been stigmatized, and it makes me wonder what the future
100%.
of the world is going to be like for cannabis. Do you think it's going to be more open? I mean, millennials are
it's definitely going to be more open, and oh yeah, for sure. I am technically on that cusp of Gen Z or millennial, like right there. And my little sister, who just turned 18, is so Gen Z, it hurts. But you can see the compassion and the care and the like love that she has for absolutely everyone, and how she doesn't want to hurt anyone, and how she wants everybody to want that for everyone else, which is super beautiful. I lost where I was going with that because I just wanted to hype my sister up. She's super cool. But I think, oh, right, I remember. So cannabis is going to be a lot more like, chill vibes, I guess. I think a lot more people are going to be more open to it. They're going to be a lot more okay with it happening around them. And I think a lot of that has to do with educating. And that's why I'm so passionate about educating others. If it weren't for me educating my family, they would still have that like dark cloud stigma around me. And now my mom comes to me because, oh, my jaw hurts. What should I take? Should I smoke a joint, or should I put CBD lotion on it? Like that kind of stuff. So like, I don't know. I tell her all the time, I'm not a doctor, Mom. I don't know which one's going to work better for you, but you have to, which one are you more comfortable with trying? What seems more logical to you? And that's more of like what I try to do. I outside of the podcast, I'm a private patient consultant. So I sit there and like break down like how, like if you don't know what to take, I sit down and break down what the pros and cons of each of them are. So if you wanted to have an edible or something versus smoking, we could sit there and be like, okay, well, smoking's immediate and edibles might take 2 hours. What will work better for you? And that's how I break things down. And my grandma is the kind of lady who would have been like, oh my God, the devil's lettuce. And now she is like, yeah, I'll take CBD every day. Thanks, it helps so much.
Well, I think
So
a lot of it plays on the factor
educating.
of like how stereotypicalized it is, but it's not
Mhm.
everybody in the world is going to change the perspective of doing marijuana. There's always going to be people that are like, I don't want a stone society. That's true. I don't want one either, but I think it's the aspect of like, you don't need to be doing it 24/7 either. There's people out there that'll
Yeah,
do it on days they just need a relaxation thing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It'll
There
never
are
get
some
to
people
that
who
point.
just treat it as a beer. There are some people who treat it as aspirin, and I think it's about doing it in a healthy way be that's going to be helpful for you. So if you think weed is that recreational, like instead of having a beer, I'm gonna have a joint, like fuck yeah, go you. If you're the kind of person who wants to like use a joint instead of aspirin or whatever other painkiller on the market, I have like a majority of the patients that I saw at the dispensary I worked at, they were MS patients or they had like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS. There have been lots of patients that have IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. Most of the people I saw come through that dispensary, I'd say like a good 85% were genuinely people coming in for medicine. And that was really eye-opening and super beautiful because I come from the instead of having a beer, let's have a joint kind of a space. And then it took a little while, but now I also use it medically. Ugh. I kind of had to learn about why it's helpful medically before I jumped into it that way. I had my cousin, I was doing a online economics class over winter break because I failed it and I had to like retake it for school and I was freaking out. It was the worst thing ever. I barely passed. Anyway, so it's like Christmas Eve or some shit and we have a test due, which is dumb as hell. So I'm doing the test and I'm having a panic attack. My cousin comes in and she says, "Girl, you need to go smoke a joint. Let's go outside and go smoke. Like, I know you have stuff with you. Like, I have stuff with me. Like, let's go on a walk." So go outside. And that is the first time I used weed to help my anxiety or to bring me down from a panic attack. And that was the first time I used it in a medical stand. And that was absolutely life changing. And then I started using it in that way. And that was beautiful.
When
It
you
was beautiful.
first smell marijuana or just smell weed around in the area or whatever, what's the first memory that comes into your mind?
The first memory, that's kind of interesting. That's a
Because
good
every time
question.
I smell it, I think of my grandparents' house because every time when I was a kid, it's nostalgia for me. My uncles would always go, "We're going to go out on the porch and have a cigarette," and then they came back smelling like that. So whenever
Okay,
I just met my uncle recently. Well, not met him, but seen him. And when we were talking, I was like, "Why do you smell like it smells like grandma's house?" And I realized, oh, he reeks of weed, and that's what it was. So it was like this mind
that's
blow where
such
I'm
a
like, every time I smell it now, I think of like Thanksgiving, I think of Christmas, I think of all these like
honestly, that's the cutest memory and the way to like associate weed. That is so adorable. I
my
wish I could associate my grandma with every time I smell weed.
my
Every time.
cousin lives out in Colorado now because
Mhm.
he stayed with us for a little bit and he recorded me saying that. He goes, "That's the funniest thing I've ever heard." I was like, is it funny or is it really sad? Because if you look at it, like that's my childhood right there. Like smelling marijuana
Yeah.
makes me think of grandma's cookies. Like shit.
I don't know. I think it could be worse for me. Whenever I like smell it, and I like a memory trigger that it gives me is the first time I smoked weed, and it's with my boyfriend at the time and like his roommate and stuff like that. So we smoke, then we get out of the car, and I turn my head to look at my boyfriend at the time, and he was like 50 feet ahead of me. Like it was like one of those like slow mo turn my head and then like turn back, and he was like so. It was the weirdest sensation. It was like time. It was like the first time I experienced time like really slow down because
Yeah.
of weed, and it was yeah, that's kind of what I think of. And this was also the first night I smoked weed and the first night I did acid, which
It
was a
also
terrible
it
thing.
every time I've smoked, I've had a really bad experience with McDonald's. the one time I got really high to the point where like I needed to hop into the shower, which was like a good way to come down kind of. I
Mhm.
ate 3 McChickens, and I've never puked so hard in my entire life to the point I haven't eaten McDonald's since that day. And
Oh my.
that was about 7, 8 years ago. And so then I look at the one time I went to go see a Dirty Heads concert. Because like I said, my family plays all music, so we get free tickets to everything. They work radio. So like I was always going to concerts. I met Slightly Stupid, smoked a joint with them. It was a fucking amazing experience. But when we went to go see the Dirty Heads after the concert, we went to McDonald's and I was like, "Can I get a 20-piece McNugget?" And to me, that sounds like a normal number. Yo, it was a lot
Yeah.
of nuggets. I mean, like, we waited 15 minutes for that thing to come out, and then it finally came out. I ate about like 7 nuggets, and I was like, I'm out. Like, this is it. He goes, dude, I bought you 20. I was like, I don't care. Like, it's a lot of nuggets.
Yeah, anytime I get nuggets, it's like, holy fuck, 10 is a lot. But then, like, your stoned ass is like, I need 100 nuggets.
You don't need 100 nuggets. You need a nap or something.
Yeah, exactly. I just, I don't know. I have a lot of, like, my friend and I on 420, when we were, like, hanging out and stuff, her and I, we smoked a dozen blunts, and that was fab. We like she had broken her ankle like a little while ago, and she was just like, fuck it, let's get high as hell. Hell, it's 420, so why not? And we just sat around her living room rolling up blunt after blunt after blunt. A dozen later, I'm like, I gotta go home, it's time for a nap, time to go to bed. And
That's
then
the
I
best part. That's the best part
Yeah.
about it for me is I'm an insomniac. So like when smoking, I would be like, I'm gonna go to bed. Everyone's like, but you just smoked. I'm like, yeah, that's how I would love to enjoy my highs
Mhm.
because going to bed right now, I never get sleep. I never get tired. But when I
Yes.
do smoke, it's like, all right, my body's like, we can now relax. Like the muscles just start releasing. I'm like, all right, I'm about to hit the bed sheets and I'm out.
Yes, that's definitely something I was using my weed for last night. I was, oh, it was like 10:30, and I was like, "Hello, I'm awake," just as if it was like 4 p.m. And so I found we're like currently out of our smokables for THC, but I had some Baked Brother syrup, which is oh so freaking great. It's think of it like a cough syrup consistency, but it's only weed. So you like dump it in your drink or whatever. Oh, it was so great. And I went to sleep like a baby. It took a little while for it to hit me. Edibles, sometimes they're pretty hit and miss. And I think it's because I have a weird metabolism. And that's why edibles can work for some people and not work for others. And it's like metabolism and all these other interesting kind of
All these
body
things that you
functions.
probably talk about in your show to help the people know.
Exactly. So we've got Um, so that's what I did last night. Is I took probably about 75 milligrams ish, plus or minus a little bit, and then passed out. It was
Well,
good because I wouldn't have. That's why I was so asleep this morning because I slept right through my first alarm.
and you still came on to do a podcast too, so obviously
Woo-hoo!
there's function involved.
Oh, absolutely. That like honestly, if I would have like drank a 6-pack of beer to go to sleep, because some people do that, I wouldn't have been awake this morning. I would be waking up with a massive headache. I would have been like probably throwing up. Like who the hell knows? Like that is not a way to self-medicate. That's not the way to do it.
And look
Mm.
what's legal in the world. Isn't that kind of sad?
It's very true that I mean there are plenty of physicians out there that will say, yeah, we don't know a whole lot about weed and it's not necessarily good or bad for you, but it's definitely not alcohol. Alcohol's some like really bad shit. So that's kind of like I don't think the last time I had a drink was probably at my parents' house, and that's just because my dad brews beer, and so I was like, testing it out and stuff. And I do enjoy beer quite a bit. I mean, my dad's been a brewer for almost 10 years. So I'll like taste stuff, and I love beer, but I don't sit and drink. I don't. I will have one beer max, maybe a week. And it's just because I don't like to feel that out of control feeling. And then here I am, I'll smoke my weed, and I feel very in control. Because then I'm like, this is that little thing, and little bitty.
I'd say the
All my
proof
ducks
is
in a
in
row.
the pudding there. I think that kind of sums up, I guess, what the point of Cannabis Quest podcast is about, is the fact we're trying to show people the better side of, what's been stigmatized for so long, that cannabis can be for everyone. You just got to find, and
Yeah,
sometimes you need that guidance on some things too. There's not a lot of
yeah,
education on it out there. And I think people like you that are out there educating other people out there about it, maybe try it. If it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, it's not. Don't, it's not this type of
exactly.
life or death scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. My younger sister, she was telling me that she has horrible like stomach problems, and she was like having days where she would like throw up and stuff. And I'm like, hey, like I know you don't want to. She doesn't drink, and she's never smoked weed or anything like that. And that blows my mind, because by the time I was her age, I was like getting drunk on weekends. But anyways, I looked at her and I was like, you can try weed. Let me tell you all of these things about it. And if you want to try it, let me know. And so like I broke down like, okay, it can help with this part of your symptoms and this symptom and this symptom. And you could eat it, you could try and smoke it, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Like there's tinctures. So you don't have to smoke it, you don't have to eat it, you just like drop it under your tongue and kind of go from there. And she was very open-minded about it, which was really nice. But I know it's going to take her a little while to truly consider it. But I think just like telling people how it can help and giving them that option is more important than just being like, smoke this weed. Oh, how dare you not smoke this weed kind of thing. I'm never that kind of person to like pressure her. I even told her, I was like, please don't make me feel like I'm pressuring you. I'm not trying to like get you to smoke weed. Like definitely consider it, because this is what it will help you with. And that's what I try to do.
Well, why don't you
Definitely.
promote it? Tell everybody where they can find you at too. YouTube.
Yeah, I wish YouTube is awful and has a really bad weed policy. But we are on CannabisQuestHQ.com. We are also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can find us on Instagram at Cannabis Quest Podcast. And then Hunter is Space Cadet Hunter 710, and then I am Space Cadet Clover. And you can like find our personal pages too if you feel like it. I do private like video calls with you if you need to learn more or talk more about weed. Those are all available as well for a small fee. And yeah, if you are also interested in like becoming a part of a guest or anything like that, we're Cannabis Quest Podcast at Gmail.
Well, I guess try cannabis and try Cloverland Dairy Milk. They're not a sponsor, but God, I wish they were.